Honourable Damien O'Connor.
I'm sure there's a lot of hunting goes on up there. I'm not sure how many things they hit, though. And Mr.
Be careful
Speaker,
when you come.
Labor supported and was part of the initiation of this bill, of course, in 2008, when good intent was in place to bring some coordination to the issue of recreational hunting, I guess, tension between the hunting sector and conservationists across the country. Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, there have been a number of introduced pests into this country. Some of them have ended up being partially productive. Some of them have been totally destructive. And what we're dealing with here is ones that kind of fall in the middle. Some people see them as a great asset and others as a huge liability, particularly on the conservation estate. Mr. Speaker, there is a philosophical divide here that has, I guess, been behind many of the submissions to the Select Committee. I wasn't on the committee, but I've heard and spoken to many people from both sides. Labor supports the need for greater coordination between hunters and conservationists. It's sensible. These are people who are passionate about the outdoors, and I applaud them. Whether someone goes out into the outdoors to walk or to mountain bike or to go and hunt, they're all appreciating the spectacular natural values of our country and are prepared to step in and pay their taxes and support them. So we must support whatever their interests are. But it does come down to, and I guess the reality, it's not been said here other than by myself, that 1080 has been a big player in this whole tension. And the fact that as the Department of Conservation and regional councils and farmers have become more effective in the management of the possum population, they have spread 1080 far more systematically and accurately than they did in the early 1970s, Mr. Speaker. But they've done so, and there has been some by-kill. There's no doubt about that. And so hunters who have been passionate about going out and finding the odd deer or chamois or tar, but deer in more particular, have been aggrieved or felt aggrieved that, in fact, their prey has been reduced by this, I guess, broadcasting of poison to kill possums. And so there's been a view that the hunting fraternity should have more say in that management. Conservationists, on the other hand, would be happy to see them all go and see the forest, indigenous forest, restored to their original values. Actually, that's impossible, really, because forest will evolve. So the tension between deer numbers in our indigenous forests has been at the heart of this debate, in my view. On top of that, there has been a growing commercial hunting sector that does make a lot of money, does bring a lot of export dollars into the country through people flying in, staying at high-value lodges, spending a whole lot of money to go out and trophy hunt in our wonderful conservation state and in the national parks, as we've seen. Managing that in an appropriate way is the objective of this whole exercise. However, the bill's been tinkered with, and because of MMP and the deals effectively with the Honourable Peter Dunn, one sector's kind of got some momentum, and that has been the commercial hunting fraternity. They have been well represented, they have done a lot of good lobbying, and some might say they've won the day. And I think the concern with the Minister's SOP that removes the recreational component of hunting is a backward step that will not deliver, through this legislation, the outcome that everyone was looking for in 2008 when the process was initiated. And so I believe we'll be back in this House in the very near future making changes to this legislation because we find there are some perhaps imbalances. The one in particular, I've had assurances from the hunting fraternity that they will in no way, through this new Game Animal Council, attempt to stop the utilisation of 1080 in the forest areas that are pretty hard to get to. and I welcome that assurance, and I'll be watching very closely for them committing to that, because if we back away from that determination to knock bovine tuberculosis on the head and to knock the possum numbers down to very low numbers, then we as a nation are exposed and at risk to a further big outbreak of bovine tuberculosis, and no one wants that. Mr. Speaker, the last member from the Green Party did raise an issue that we should be mindful of, and that is the issue on the control of Canadian geese, where effectively a management plan did not work, and the numbers of geese did get out of control to a point where there was a new approach needed to get on top. Mr. Speaker, we hope that these faults and failings do not result from the passage of this bill. Labor does have concerns. We supported the bill into the Select Committee. Changes have been made, as many will say, but we're not convinced that each and every one of them has been the right change. And the Minister's SOP at the last minute does beg some questions. The overriding considerations is a term in the bill that I've gone through and read, and it basically says just about anything, really, that leaves the door open for the Minister to do what he or she should like, and that is that regulations being made by the Minister have to take on board purposes of the Act, of course the Wild Animal Control Act, and overriding considerations. If you read through that, I'm not going to read it in this House, but it covers everything. And so I'm a bit concerned about handing to any Minister some open right to make, I guess, management plans for some wild animals. We have a spectacular conservation estate. We do need to protect it. We need to be mindful of, under this government, of a squeeze on the Department of Conservation that has meant they are looking for more partnerships on a commercial basis. In this particular area, it may very well lead to herds of tahr or chamois that are managed for very wealthy people who might pay big fees to their hosts and then on to the Department of Conservation. And if indeed that's what the government expects, then they should be upfront about that, because that will limit the ability of ordinary New Zealanders, like the member over the other side there, Mr. Roy, to put a gun on his back and go out and shoot tahr or chamois or anything that moves, in fact. And if we had a few more Eric Roys, if we had a few more, I'm sure we'd have far lower numbers of deer and chamois and tammy and tahr. But the fact is that he spends too much time in the House here, I guess, to do that. Can I say, Mr. Speaker, in all seriousness, that Labor would like to have supported a bill that did achieve a fine balance between recreational, commercial and conservation interests here in hunting. We accept that we have these exotic animals in our Indigenous forests. They do have an impact. We need to keep the numbers low. We need to seize the opportunities for commercial exploitation where possible, but not at the expense of conservation and not at the expense of what is a reasonable expectation for New Zealand hunters to go out in the bush and to find something that they can shoot at and bring home for tea. So, Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that we can't. I would have liked to have spoken in support of this piece of legislation, but the changes were not good enough, the protections were not good enough, and I just hope that we do get a positive outcome for conservation and for hunting from this.
Jackie Dean.
Thank you. I want to make the